Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Florida. And today our question comes to us from Antonio Huerta. And Antonio has this question. What do I see as the reason for the disdain we sometimes see toward the Wiccan religion from other branches of modern Western paganism? And how do I think it might be possible to address and remediate this? And my answer to this question is that, in my opinion, there are two primary reasons for the disdain that Antonio is referring to, one of which is pretty much irremediable, it's out of our hands, and the other of which largely is already remedied, I believe. But I will tell you my opinion as to what these are, and your mileage, of course, might vary. But you're asking my opinion, so that's the one you're getting. I think the two reasons why we see this kind of disdain from some other branches of modern Western paganism, certainly not all, but I think the reason we see it comes first from jealousy. Wicca is the largest, richest, and most socially accepted form of modern Western paganism, and this, of course, can cause jealousy in more marginalized movements. And what I would say is that when people have strong, healthy egos, when they have done their shadow work, they don't feel jealousy at other people's success. Instead, when they desire similar success, they go about learning how to achieve it. But when people have more wounded egos, they often do not realize that the sort of success that we see in the Wiccan movement is the result of specific decisions and actions and habits and behaviors, and not just the luck of the draw. In their mind, it's something that should just magically come to everyone, and they don't understand why they don't have it, and therefore they resent it. Again, I'm not talking about everyone, but we also don't see this attitude from everyone. I'm talking about the people from whom you strongly see the attitude. And I think that were they to invest in self-examination and shadow work, they might look at things differently, but I don't think that's going to happen. Now, I will also say that part of this comes out of the Wiccan movement itself, and I think that there are parts of Wicca that also had this aspect of wounded egos that used jealousy and disdain as political tactics, and I think that, unfortunately, we kind of set this bar ourselves. Not all of us, but certain branches, certain kinds of Wicca, certain individuals, I think basically set this as the way to be. And others have fought against it for many years with greater or lesser success. Wicca, as I say, is the most accepted form of modern Western paganism because many Wiccan leaders, such as, for example, Selena Fox, the late Pete Pathfinder Davis, and many others have spent years and years fighting for that acceptance, and often at great personal sacrifice. It didn't just happen. And I see many of these other movements not necessarily equally invested in their own future. And I don't think in many cases they understand how you build acceptance and success as a movement. I think often, again, I think many of them think it's a matter of luck, that it just comes to you, and it doesn't. Now, a second aspect of this has to do with the reason that some people come to the pagan movement. People come to paganism for many, many reasons, but some of them come because they feel like social outcasts, and they've often built their identity around this. And in their mind, their paganism is part of being a small, exclusive club, and anything that is larger or more mainstream is a threat to that identity. And I think that some of the disdain comes from that attitude as well. And this is certainly not an attitude that I have. And I have to tell you, when I see people describing themselves as weird or odd because they're pagan, I really don't get that. I've never seen myself that way at all. I've seen myself as a well-educated gentleman who happens to be pagan for a variety of reasons, some familial, and some a matter of the fact that it makes the most sense to me of all the systems that I've studied. But not because I'm odd or weird, nor do I see it as making me odd or weird. But a lot of people have built their identity around the idea that they are marginalized. And when a movement such as Wicca begins to escape that marginalization, they resent it because it threatens that identity. So that's the first reason. And as I say, it's pretty much irremediable. There's nothing that we can do for either of those things. Only the people who are in that position can help themselves to perhaps address those issues within themselves. So they will go on behaving badly toward members of other branches of paganism indefinitely, because again, they find it threatens their identity. Now, the second reason that I think we see this disdain is our own fault, absolutely, and also is much more remediable and largely remediated, and that is the identity wars of the 90s and early 2000s, when the Wiccan movement basically ripped itself apart over who was and was not Wiccan, to no purpose because it was not a question that could be resolved through conflict. And in the end, it came to be a draw. At this point, most of Wicca is resolved not to go back into that fight. Now, there are certainly people around the edges of the Wiccan movement who would love to have that fight over again, even though it was nothing but destructive. But most of us are not going to go into it this time if someone tries to start it up again. And we have resolved that while we may disagree about definitions and practices and even origins, we don't have to fight about that. And the fight is only a waste of resources and it drags us down. And people that I know who are prominent in the movement have no desire to see that again. So I would say that we have remediated that part, but the problem, which lingers from it, is that all of the vitriol and bad feeling that was created during that conflict has affected how some people see us, properly so, and lingers in their mind even if we have dealt with it. So I think that is the second major reason. And how do we overcome that one? By not fighting among ourselves and not making each other look foolish. We certainly could go back into that fight, but it serves no purpose, it cannot be resolved, and it only drags us all down. So as I say, people I know who are prominent in the movement want no part of that again. But I think that as I look at the community, I don't see it likely to happen again. I think people learn the lesson of a long drawn-out feudal fight and are going to avoid it in future. But I do think it damaged our image. So these are my opinions of why we see that kind of disdain from certain other branches of modern Western paganism and what we can and cannot do about it. So I hope you find it interesting, and until next time, may you blessed be.
Involution. The Vangelo delle Streghe says that the god fell into matter. This means that he involved. To involve is to focus solely on a part of creation, assuming a spiritual tunnel vision. Involution slows the vibration of energy and increases its density, thus physicalizing it. Involution gives an illusion of separation from Goddess, affording a singularity of perception which allows a thing to be studied in great detail by blocking out the rest of creation. Since all above is also below, the process of involution is reflected in all things which must first involve before they can evolve. That is to say, they must first adopt a highly personal and focused view, from which deep understanding and integration is possible, before they can widen their view to contemplate the wholeness of existence.